Sun culture also focus on the agricultural part. So there's a very large part, over 550 million people in sub-Saharan Africa are farmers, and there's a lot of problems with irrigation. And like so far, how you solve irrigation is fairly straightforward. If you need to build a drip system, you need to have like some kind of pump to get the water from somewhere. The pump is very often run by a diesel generator. So you need to pay for diesel. You have a very large upfront cost for a generator, and then you have the pump. All of this together, very large cost. What if you come in with, again, like cool modern technology, and you have a solar array, and you have an electric pump, and a drip system? Bam, you can irrigate your field, and you get better results per acre. It's a 0 to 1 problem a lot of times. So like in this case, you can go from like $600 of acre to like over 10,000, which is a huge jump in potential income.
Hi, welcome to Off the Record, Climate Edition. This is the podcast about what's hot in climate tech and everything playing out behind the scenes. Thanks to 3 converging miracles, the continent of Africa is one step closer to living out the Solarpunk utopian dream where people can live in harmony with nature. This episode is based on Skander Garroum's viral article that blew up, focusing on how solar and batteries took hold, how African countries are using the tech to leapfrog others in the West, and the amazing things they're achieving as a result. You'll want to check out today's episode if you want to know about the 3 miracles of solar, about Sun King and Sun Culture's massive global success, and the current limits of the solar revolution. Let's dive right in. Hi, everyone. I'm Jordy Gold.
And I'm Skander Garroum.
Today, we're going to be looking at some fascinating developments that are a little more off the radar rather than being off the record. Now, Skander, there's a lot of bad stuff happening in the world right now, but you've managed to write an article on a truly incredible good news story. It's entitled Why Solarpunk is Already Happening in Africa. Now, your article totally went viral on Y Combinator site Hacker News. What kind of engagement are you seeing? What kind of numbers are showing up here?
It went really, really viral. So like right now, 1 week after publishing, 100,000 views, 900 something comments.
Whoa.
I think a few people are interested, yeah.
That is wild. That's a lot of people. Now, you packed a lot of good stuff into this deep dive. I don't think we can possibly cover everything you talked about, but I think we can get through some of the most interesting stuff and maybe some of the interesting ideas that are coming out on that site where everything went viral and everyone's weighing in and has a lot to say about these different ideas. Now, if people are interested and they want to learn more, they want to read the whole deep dive, we'll put up a link for the story below. People can go to Substack, they can go to Climate Drift to the website and check out the full piece. Now, before we actually dig into things, can you tell people what Solarpunk actually is at a high level? And then in general, just very simply, what's happening with solar across Africa right now that is so exciting?
Okay, so Solarpunk is, well, essentially it's the idea that the future doesn't have to be dystopian. So like technology, nature, and humans can all work together and can all coexist in harmony, and we can actually build a future that's livable and that's not, one other counter vision for the future would be cyberpunk, where everything is gritty and dark and broken. And Solarpunk is literally the opposite. Everything is sunny and green, and we still can live in the future.
Oh, now, there are terrible things that it took so long for some of these kind of breakthroughs to happen in Africa. There's been a lot of suffering, a lot of difficult things for many years. Now we're seeing solar energy just blow up right across the continent and help so many people and improve quality of life and all those kinds of things. Now, in your piece, you make a comment about how it's great that the grid, the electricity grid, never actually came to Africa. It's a bit of a confusing idea, a little bit surprising. Maybe you could help sort of set the stage for us and help us understand what's happening there and what you meant by that comment.
Well, you could say unfortunately, or thankfully, depending on like where you stand for this narrative, but like it's one of the precursors for the whole story, right? So the reality is around 600 million people in sub-Saharan Africa don't have access to reliable power, and a very large part of that are like obviously like smallholder rural farming households, right? Like subsistence farming essentially. And the core of the issue is that like our Western mindset and perspective on the grid is something that happened for us, right? Like, speaking as a German who lived in the US for a long time, the grid build out and our electricity, especially like the rural electrification, happened 100-ish years ago, like around the 1920s, 1930s, where for the first time you had this like actual grid development. And grid for us as a fairly fixed perspective. The grid is centrally organized. There is utilities / the state building centralized power generation. From that, there is transformers and lines bringing the electricity to the end users, and then the end users are being built. And this is how we imagine the system. And this is also how the system is being built in very large parts of like Africa and the rest of the world. The problem is this is not going fast enough. And the worst thing is the unit economics are unfortunately not working. So if you are a grid provider in Africa and you want to connect, rural parts of the grid, you don't have the consumers who actually have the finances to pay for it. And very often they're also unbanked, right? So like the question is not only can they pay for it and can we thus finance the grid, but also do we have the infrastructure to let them pay for it so we can build the grid further?
Okay, so there's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of people who don't have the power they need or haven't had the power that they need. A lot of bad stuff going on here. What is good about the grid not actually coming there?
Well, like the bad thing, just to name that very, very concretely, is like a lot of those people don't have electricity. That means once it goes dark, they cannot just go, switch on a light. They don't have a fridge. They cannot charge their mobile phones if they have them. So like, truly without electricity, you're disconnected in a lot of ways. And you have hundreds and thousands of like, second order problems that come with it. And yet the alternatives, like what happens if you don't have electricity? What else do you use? Kerosene, traditional cook stove, oil lamps, leads to a lot of air pollution and a lot of other costs that are like very hard to like measure and actually see. So those like just to make like that picture very clear on like what are the terrible things. The positive things is this sucks so much that people try to do it by themselves. And that means that we see new solutions actually take off. And this is what the piece is in the end about.
Okay. So can you give us an idea, just sort of high level picture? What are those kinds of things that are being enabled? What are they doing to make this happen? How many people are being impacted? How fast is this going? Just like briefly sort of summarize things a little bit.
So the one meta thing that you kind of need to understand for that is leapfrogging. So
Okay.
leapfrogging is if you don't have one existing technologies, and there's a few like favorite examples I have for leapfrogging. In Africa, very clearly, it's also like phone lines to mobile phones. Like if you don't have an existing phone line infrastructure, you don't need to build one nowadays because nowadays everybody has a mobile phone and you need to build out the cellular network instead. So you can jump over one very heavy to build out and expensive to build out and complicated to build out infrastructure layer and just jump to like the future infrastructure layer of mobile phones. In China, you could see the same thing with bicycles going to EVs, right? Where they jumped in some ways over fossil fuel powered cars and like the whole infrastructure that you need for that, because everybody is now immediately switching to EVs, and like over 70% at this point of cars that are being sold are already EVs. And the whole point here, and that's the Solarpunk part of it, is now this is happening from no grid to solar, batteries, and specific use case, right? Essentially, it goes to everything which you need electricity for, like TVs, mobile phone charging, and also irrigation and pumps.
Okay, can you give us your like ballpark picture? Like how many people are we talking about? How many products? How much power? Do you have any sort of just general sense?
Yeah, of course. This has been going on for a few years. This is not something that just like started last year. This is a development that has been going on for the last 15 years, and there's multiple large scale companies who are in this field. One good example is Sun King.
Okay.
It sold in 23 alone over 20 million solar products, right? And a
Whoa.
solar product is solar component plus battery plus something like lamp or ventilator in over 42 countries. They had over 40 million customers. So
Wow.
the scale is very, very large. And this is like the largest company in the space, right? And then there's a company called Sun Culture, which is smaller but is focused on the agricultural part. They're selling solar plus battery plus pumps to enable irrigation, right? Different field, but just shows that you can package this in a lot of different ways.
Not that I'm up on everything happening in Africa, but I hadn't heard anything about this until you shared your article and I saw this stuff and saw these numbers. I couldn't believe what's actually happening. It's amazing. Now, you say that all of this basically happened because of three converging miracles. Could you tell us about what these three miracles are?
Yeah, of course. Miracle number one is learning curves enabling solar costs to fall and battery costs to fall, to be fair. So the short story behind that is the more we produce of something in a scalable way, the better we are at producing it, the cheaper it gets. And that means there are more use cases that are being enabled through this. Like for solar, that means in the last 45 years, we had a 99.5 decline in power generation prices. So
Wow.
we got really, really good at producing solar. We got really, really good at making solar cheap.
Yeah.
So if you come from like a tech angle, this is essentially Moore's law, but for sunshine.
Okay. Gotcha.
Um, so that's miracle number one. Solar hardware, battery hardware, like the tech hardware behind it got so cheap because we started producing so much. So number two is transaction costs, right? I was mentioning before that a lot of people in sub-Saharan Africa are unbanked. And banking infrastructure is fairly expensive. So that means, I'm not sure like how much, Jody, you're paying for your bank account in Canada. But for me in Germany, it's actually fairly cheap how much I pay on a monthly basis,
Yeah.
which is fairly typical for the West. In Africa, it's the other way around. Like, first of all, there's no large banking infrastructure, and the second is banks are fairly expensive. But this is changing now because there's something that's coming in that is zero cost mobile transactions. So this started actually in Kenya. There's the Kenyan Telecom came out with a product called M-Pesa, and essentially it's pay by text. And as long as you have a mobile phone, a mobile contract, you can now use mobile money. And the transaction costs there are like either zero or negligible. And that means that now over 70% of Kenyans actually use that mobile money. So everybody, like even people who don't have a bank account, can now pay very small sums, and this is the important part for miracle number three, very small sums very easily via their phone. And the miracle number three is kind of like products into services and pay as you go. There's this world, and this is the world that we in the West very often live in. If you want to have a solar array on your roof and a battery, you need to upfront the whole cost. You need to pay thousands of dollars for the solar array and 1,000 more for the battery. And that is like, you want a product, you pay for the product, you get the product. But you can turn it around and turn the product into a service. So instead of paying everything up front, you lease it, right? Like, and this is like something that we know for cars nowadays in the West. But imagine this adapted to Africa and solar hardware that would cost like $100 up front, but now is actually cheaper because it then can go down to like 20 cents a day. And thus it becomes affordable to a lot of people who don't, have a bank account and that many savings.
It's hard enough to get one miracle to happen. It's really something to see three miracles pull together at the exact same time and make something happen. So they basically unlocked this whole new way to generate and use power in places that they really didn't have access before. It's truly incredible. Now, what does this mean for people all across Africa?
Now you can package all these different products and services together and make it accessible, right? Like it goes back to like the number of products being sold. There's obviously demand that if you don't have light at night and you don't have access to electricity and a grid connection is very far away and very costly, that you jump on a potential solution that could enable you to switch on the light at night, to charge your phone, to get your kids to study after dark because there's light, or even to cook without like kerosene fumes, or irrigate your field without buying a diesel pump, right? And paying for the diesel on top of that.
Of course, of course. Earlier, you mentioned a couple of examples. You threw out, I think it was Sun King and Sun Culture, which again, I hadn't heard of. I didn't know anything about them. Any chance you could sort of break this down, give us a little more information on these case studies, what's actually happening, what success they're having, how they're helping people?
Yeah. So first of all, very very big shout out. You can check out deeper case study for both of them. I will be able to do a very short explainer of both of them now. But essentially, Sun King is focused on combining solar plus batteries plus specific use cases. And specific use cases, again, are you don't have reliable electricity. How about you have now an LED lamp that you can switch off? You charge during the day through your little solar panel plus battery, and then you can keep on at light. And the same goes for the ventilators that they saw combined with solar. The same goes for TV, et cetera, right? So there's a lot of different products that they offer at this point. And again, they make them available through pay as you go. You don't pay the full price for the whole products. You pay kind of like a rental fee if you want so. And then you pay off the purchasing cost over time. But then you can use it, and that's great, right? And that enables you to, if you are a market seller, to have electricity and actually keep your lights on. Sun culture does that, also focus on the agricultural part. So there's a very large part, over 550 million people in sub-Saharan Africa are farmers, and there's a lot of problems with irrigation. And like so far, how you solve irrigation is fairly straightforward. If you need to build a drip system, you need to have like some kind of pump to get the water from somewhere. The pump is very often run by a diesel generator. So you need to pay for diesel. You have a very large upfront cost for a generator, and then you have the pump, and then you can irrigate it. Like all of this together, very large cost. What if you come in with, again, like cool modern technology, and you have a solar array, and you have an electric pump, and a drip system? Bam, you can irrigate your field, and you get a better results per acre.
Now, I think you have a number, like actual amount of money per acre of the improvement. Like, it's pretty big, right?
It's huge if you couldn't irrigate your field before, because if you compare it to the West, most of our fields are irrigated. Like again, we have all that infrastructure, so it just works. If you have zero irrigation, or the jump from zero irrigation to irrigated fields is as large as you have zero electricity and no light at night to having light at night. It's a 0 to 1 problem a lot of times. So like in this case, you can go from like $600 of acre to like over 10,000, which is a huge jump in potential income.
That's enormous. That would just change someone's life completely. And one just quick clarification. You mentioned earlier you were going through the pricing and how people pay, and you said something like it's kind of like renting in terms of the amount of money per month, but it's really kind of like rent to own. It's once you paid it off, you own the system, and once you get to that point, it's basically like having free electricity, right?
It's a microgrid in the truest
Yep.
sense of the word. Like you pay for your own setup, and you rent it in the beginning, and then you pay it off, and then you actually own it, right? Like yes, that's a nice little like actual like Solarpunk version of it all, that in the end everybody could have their own little grid.
Yeah. For us, where we live and how we pay for things, and you always know you're going to pay more in the future, and prices just go up. The idea of getting to the point where you basically don't keep paying is kind of like a revolutionary idea if that system happens to be the right size system for you. Now, it sounds like these companies are putting up some really big numbers. They're truly changing lives. And now, when we were talking about this, you said these installations can generate truly high quality, verifiable carbon credits. Which always there's a lot of question on, are carbon credits good enough? Are they real? Can they be verified? And you're saying that they absolutely can. And that basically when these companies sell these carbon credits, that they can massively subsidize the whole operation and drop the price of the products. This honestly almost sounds too good to be true.
Yes. So if you know me, you know that I might have had or have some problems with carbon credits and the whole carbon offsetting market. So before you jump on it and say, oh, carbon credits are crap, read my articles on it. I got enough flack from the carbon offsetting world. The reality is that a lot of people in the West have a carbon problem. A lot of companies at this point are going off and buying something of the market, and a lot of those, fairly high quality credits are actually agricultural credits. And the nice part that like Sun Culture, for example, is doing is they can measure how often their pumps are being used. And those are electric pumps. So they're like one-to-one replacing diesel pumps. So you can very quickly do the whole like measurement, reporting, verification part in a nicely like automated way, and thus create like fairly high quality carbon credits, and thus push the whole flywheel again, because the flywheel of like selling a packaged solar irrigation system to like the widest amount of people and like subsidizing it is obviously very cool, right? Like that's the idea.
So where does this model go next in Africa? And will this model be a blueprint to work outside the continent?
Yes, or it wouldn't be already sold in 40 plus countries that are not only in Africa, right? So obviously this model can work everywhere where there's no functioning grid. That's it's kind of like the number one thing. Obviously, if we compare it to like our very nice lives in the West, like we're currently talking through very electricity heavy computers on a, internet line with a very nice, like setup and lights and all of these things. And this obviously uses a lot of electricity, right? And this is not the electricity standard that like a system like this can currently produce. We are thinking again about like the 0 to 1. If you're currently sitting in the dark and after the system you have an LED light, that is the change. Like the change is that now you can work after dark. Your kids can study after dark. That you can charge your phone. You can see what is happening. Right? Some of the comments were also just case studies of people who before they couldn't see if animals were coming into their flat, or like seeing insects, etc., right? Like there's a huge difference, and those are just the beginning use cases, because right now solar is cheap, batteries are cheap, and LEDs are insanely cheap, because everything got scaled up, right? But there's obviously a lot of more use cases that are coming. Like think about refrigeration. There's already companies there that are trying to do this like whole system but scaled up. Think about also like manufacturing to a certain degree. We have some countries in Africa that have a fairly existing grid, but the grid is, cracking under pressure. There's brownouts. South Africa is a very good example. So there is production facilities in South Africa that are already looking into creating microgrids for themselves, which by the way is also happening in the West. In the wider sense, this is happening in the US, where you have like some areas that are also already having problems with brownouts and hurricanes, etc., where microgrids are an existing solution. So there's a given scale to it. Let's put it that way. And there's a lot of use cases and a lot of things that we still need to test out.
Now, there was a ton of engagement on this article. There's a lot of ideas, some skepticism, some excitement. Is there any ideas, any comments in particular that stood out? Anything that really surprised you? Anything that changed what you were thinking? Anything that made you even more excited? Anything like that?
I think it's the pure fact that this is a flywheel that works by itself, right? So we are living, unfortunately, in a world where a lot of foreign aid is being cut, like talking about the USAID cuts, but I'm also talking about European countries cutting their like subsidies to sub-Saharan Africa by over 30% this year, right? And this is a flywheel that has been working in the background, that has been working without outside support, except, venture capital money in some ways. And it just works. Like it took these companies obviously 10, 15 years to get all these puzzle pieces together. It took us, 50 plus years of learning curves on solar to actually drop the price and make it interesting. The point is like there is positive case studies. Like we are in some ways already living in a Solarpunk future. We just need to look where it happens and where these flywheels are happening without outside help and how we can accelerate them.
Well, that seems like a pretty good place to wrap things up. I mean, it's just such an exciting development. It's so nice to finally have some good news to talk about for a change. It doesn't happen that often. It's really refreshing. Again, if people are interested, they want to go much deeper. We really stayed pretty top level here. If people want to go deeper, read the whole article. Again, we'll put up the link. You can go to Substack. You can go to the Climate Drift website. Now, Skander, I don't know if you have any more viral articles that are cooking right now. I hope it'd be great to have some more stuff like this to talk about and see that kind of engagement again. But I can't wait to see what you put out next. But either way, whether it's viral, not viral, I really hope we can do this again soon.
I can't wait to do it again. And I can't wait to share more positive news because there's more stories like this.
Okay. Well, there you go. You've heard it. There's more good stuff coming. If you like what you heard, please share the episode with your friends. Always sign up for the Climate Drift newsletter. Make sure you subscribe, like the show, comment on the episode, all that good stuff. And we'll be back again soon with another episode.
Looking forward to it.